All right, we got to logically complete the text. So let's go to the text. Let's see if we can kind of understand what they're trying to lead us towards here. Sorry, I can already tell his names. I'm not going to know. Ratified by more than 90 countries, the Nagoya Protocol is an international agreement ensuring that indigenous communities are compensated when their agricultural resources and knowledge of wild plants and animals are utilized by agricultural corporations. So the indigenous compensated by corporations. However, the protocol has shortcomings. For example, it allows corporations to insist that their agreements with communities to conduct research on the commercial uses of the community's resources and knowledge remain confidential. Therefore, some indigenous advocates express concern that the protocol may have the unintended effect. Well, I don't really know where they're going, but I'm going to say it's something like hurting communities. Right? We clearly are saying this is supposed to be good. However, there's a shortcoming, so it's bad. And so they're continuing that thought here. So I'm probably looking for something bad. Let's see if that helps us here. It has the unintended effect of diminishing the monetary reward that corporations might derive from their agreements with indigenous communities. Okay, well, that's hurting somebody, but that's hurting the corporations, right? Diminishing the reward that the corporations derive. Well, we don't care about hurting the corporations. We care about hurting the indigenous communities. That's why it's bad. So this is bad for the wrong people. So that's not the right answer. B, limiting the research that corporations conduct on the resources of the indigenous communities with which they have signed agreements. Again, this is the wrong, what I would call the wrong main character. The main character of this passage is the indigenous communities. The main character of choices A and B is the corporations. That's the opposite. And I know that both are mentioned in the passage, but you should be able to tell, like, there's a main person. There's someone whose kind of perspective is the one that we're talking about, who kind of the positive and negative ideas kind of orbit around, right? So what's good for the indigenous community is probably bad for the corporation, and vice versa. And that's kind of what they're playing with here. But, right, if you keep in mind who you're really focused on, that shouldn't be a problem for you. Let's look at C. It's preventing independent observers from determining whether the agreements guarantee equitable compensation for indigenous communities. Well, this is negative, right? It's preventing these guarantees for the communities, right? So it's saying there is something bad for the communities. It's also talking about preventing observers from coming in, and they did talk about things remaining confidential, right? Meaning it's not publicly known, it's kept secret. So that checks that box. Maybe that's related. Let's look at D. It's discouraging indigenous communities from learning new methods for harvesting plants and animals from their corporate partners. Well, this is negative in a sense, but it's kind of flipping things again. The indigenous communities are not harvesting from the corporations. The corporations are taking from the indigenous communities. So I don't see the connection to what they're saying here. Even if you were between C and D, right? C is definitely better because it relates back to that other strong idea in the lines about confidential information, right? So D might be negative, but it's not negative in the right way. So make as many connections as possible. That's why I talk about checking boxes, right? I think of it in my head as like each answer choice, or maybe the passage gives us a bunch of boxes that contain key ideas, right? It needs to be bad for the indigenous communities. It needs to be confidential or have to do with privacy. So the more boxes we check, the more likely a choice is right. And so if you're looking at C and D, C checks 2 boxes, D only checks 1, 2 is bigger than 1, go with C. Like, that's literally how I think of it a lot of times.